Welcome to the Prosperous Empath Podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. Kat here. If you haven't already tuned into last week's episode, hello, I'm back from maternity leave. And I'm really delighted to be here with you all. And last week I shared a recap episode of just how life and business have gone for me over the past year, what our pregnancy journey has been like, and really just some of the lessons learned in life and business. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast right along, then a lot of what we shared may not have sounded new to you, but if you're new to the podcast, I think last week's episode is a really great just recap of what my life has been like over the past year. And these episodes are also just a little more personal than what I customarily share on the podcast. But this is a huge part of my life, and becoming a mom has been just a huge yearning, a huge goal, a huge dream that I've held for myself for so long that I couldn't not share it. And moving forward, I think we're going to be sharing a lot more about parenting and some of the wisdom and how parenting applies to business and being a prosperous empath and vice versa. So if you're a mom or you're a wannabe mom, I hope that you enjoy just some of these new themes that we'll be exploring on the episode, that we'll be exploring on the podcast moving forward. So with that, let's jump in because I am so excited to share my birth story with you, some of the lessons we've learned, some of what maternity leave has been like for me, some of what has surprised me and delighted me, and also some of what's been really challenging. And I want to share a couple of my key takeaways. So much of the birth of our son, Micah, felt like an absolute whirlwind, which I imagine that's how it often feels for first-time parents and maybe for second and third-time parents as well. But ironically, I didn't actually pack our hospital bag until the night that I went into early labor, because I really didn't think we were going to deliver our baby early. I think I've shared on the podcast before that I was really hoping that we would have our baby early, that he would, or they, because we didn't know the gender, that they would come by the end of August. Our due date was September 11th, but I was really hoping that they would come by the end of August, because in most cities and counties in Massachusetts, the school enrollment date, the cutoff date, is August 31st. So if your child is born before August 31st, you can choose whether to send them to school early or to hold them back a school year. But if you deliver after August 31st, they're mandatorily held back a school year. And I wanted the option to choose. And it's not like I necessarily wanted to send my child to school early. I know that a lot of the research suggests that children who are held back do better in early childhood years, but I just wanted the option to choose based on our baby and on their specific needs. But as fate would have it, as we were approaching our due date, I was not feeling any signs of early labor. I wasn't feeling any Braxton Hicks contractions. Like, it didn't feel like this baby was coming anytime soon. And so I kind of released my attachment to wanting them to deliver early. And then I just kind of surrendered to this idea, to the likelihood that I would deliver late, as statistically speaking, most first-time moms do. And then fortuitously declare and fulfill, which in coaching we know is one of our most powerful tools. It's the possibility of declaring what you want and then surrendering to the how and the when. And we fulfilled. Micah was delivered on August 30th at 5:35 p.m. in the afternoon, which was a Friday afternoon. I was so delighted that he was born during the day rather than at nighttime. I feel like so many babies are delivered in the wee hours of the night, and I really value my sleep, and I was excited to have a full night of sleep, which was a little different with a newborn who I was trying to nurse, but that's beside the point. Our birth story feels really magical, and honestly, I'm really excited to just get to capture some of my experience here and share it with you, and also to just highlight some of the lessons learned, because how often do we have these transformational experiences and then stop and just take the time that those experiences merit and deserve to reflect? So here's a little bit of my own reflection that I want to share with you. So much of my birth story went exactly how I imagined it would, and some really important aspects absolutely did not go how I imagined they would. And I think that that's what you have to hold, right? Like, to hold your vision and then detach from the outcome, to detach from the regret of trying to control every little aspect. So more on that in a little bit, but just to share some of the details of our birth story. I'm not going to share all of it. But I experienced my very first symptoms of early labor when I woke up Wednesday night, going into Thursday morning. Thursday morning, I woke up and I experienced my very first early labor contractions, and I was spotting a little, which feels a little bit like TMI, but so be it. So all day Thursday, I was questioning whether I was in labor, because as a first-time mom, not having ever experienced contractions, not knowing how to discern, what are Braxton Hicks contractions versus early labor contractions. I really had no clue. They say that you'll know when you know. And I was still questioning through a lot of Thursday. I was in kind of steady contact with my labor doula, and she indicated that I was, in fact, experiencing early labor symptoms given what I shared with her. So, it kind of added a little fuel to my fire to get all those last minute items done that we hadn't gotten done. Ironically, that Thursday afternoon, we had our car seat installation appointment booked. So now, bear in mind, this was 2 weeks before our due date, which is very last minute for Catherine fashion, but the baby store had a month, actually it was 3 weeks back order of car seats and strollers. And so we had actually come home early from our annual summer vacation in Canada, because I felt this need, this pressure to buy the car seat and buy the stroller. So we'd actually bought them weeks and weeks ahead of time, but then they were on back order. So literally, I'm experiencing early labor contractions, and we're at the baby store finally getting our car seat installed and getting taught on how to install and to take out the car seat and how to use the stroller and to break it down and put it up. So that that happened in super last minute fashion for me. And then I think I had that like extreme sense, that extreme case of nesting that you hear about for moms. So I just had it in my mind that we should buy a new couch. My husband and I had been talking about buying a new couch. We had some cash saved up that we had been putting aside to use for a couch. So we're literally in Lazy Boy trying out couches, and I'm feeling super excited about having a couch to bring home a newborn in, right? To spend our maternity and paternity leave nested at home with a newborn cozy on a new couch. So we bought a new couch that day. And then I felt this intense pressure that we needed to go to Target to buy all the outstanding items that we hadn't yet purchased for baby that we were going to need in those early hours and days and weeks of being first-time parents. So we then went to Target and we spent a couple hours as I'm having contractions, buying all the remaining and outstanding items from our registry that people hadn't gotten us that we felt like we needed, that were like mandatory. So that was fun. And then we come home and I'm packing our hospital bag, and my husband is installing window blinds in the nursery and in our bedroom so we can, help baby adjust to the difference between day and night as they're sleeping. And I'm just like bearing in mind this wisdom from our doula and from our early, from our first-time parent education class, that if you're wanting to successfully have a natural unmedicated birth, that one of the primary structures to support that is to stay at home as long as you possibly can and to try to ignore your contractions, right? So I am doing my best to pack our hospital bag, go shopping, prepare for baby, organize the last minute things in the nursery that are still outstanding, all while I'm having early labor contractions. And so that was fun. And we were up, I was up all night. My husband was up most of the night. And honestly, I think one of the most beautiful things of that night at home, our last night at home, is like just how empathic my two dogs were. Literally, they did not leave my side. They were right outside the bathroom door as I was in the bathtub for a couple hours. And then in the early morning hours on Friday, on the day we delivered, I was literally lying on the couch with my head on our retriever's stomach, and Luna, our pit lab mix, was under my legs, and they were just so comforting and reassuring. And I felt really loved and supported that night at home. My husband was tracking the time between all of our contractions and tracking them in this app that would been recommended. We had our doula on 24/7 text support with all questions and just helping us gauge how we were progressing. I had my two dogs who were my emotional support companions. I spent most of the night in the tub, on the couch, and on my yoga ball doing all of these stretches and yoga poses that we'd learned at Spinning Babies and with our doula. And then in the early morning hours, our doula came to the house, which was, I think, the aspect of hiring a doula that I was most excited about. I knew that I would want the doula for the labor support when we were birthing the baby, but I really wanted that early labor support at home that, you read about in books and you see in movies, but it feels so outside of the norm of how it goes these days in traditional births. And it just felt so important to me to have her know our home, know our dogs, and support us in that really intimate way. So she came to the house like 5 a.m. On the day we gave birth to Micah, and we spent the first half of the day, like we spent the first 5 hours of that day, like until 10 a.m. at home, doing different yoga poses and spinning babies' postures and stretches, and just really trying to help me progress naturally at home, so that by the time we arrived at the hospital, I would be sufficiently dilated that I would be able to stay. By mid-morning, around 10:30, we all decided that it was time for us to go to the hospital. And I loved the hospital we delivered at. We delivered at the Mount Auburn Center for Women in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They partner with Harvard Medical School, and they're a teaching hospital. So there's oftentimes nurse midwives who are observing and doctors who are observing and learning. And that just felt like the exact environment that I wanted to have a baby in, and particularly to have a midwife deliver my baby. We arrived to the hospital midday, and I unfortunately wasn't able to go right up to labor and delivery. It turns out that every birthing bed was occupied and they sent us for our 38-week prenatal appointment that we'd already previously scheduled for that day, downstairs to triage us and to make sure that I was sufficiently dilated to get to stay in the hospital. And fortunately I was 6 centimeters, and off we went to labor and delivery. So this was around noon. I think by 12:30, we were safely in our own room. I had packed all of these like beautiful, holistic items to support the environment and the energy of the room. I had gotten these electric candles, and I got a heating pad, and we brought the stroller fan in case I was hot. And it turns out I needed very few of those items because I progressed so quickly from there. Again, like we delivered by 5:35 and we weren't in the birthing room until 12:30 that day. So you can imagine things moved pretty quickly. And I think what supported the time frame of my delivery was the support that I chose to partner with. I had 2 midwives overseeing the delivery of my son, and they were absolutely magical. Like they were so beautiful, and just like the caliber of support that I always envisioned for my birth. They were all about empowering mama's natural urges to push and her own wisdom around what positions that I wanted to be in. And it just felt so aligned with who I am and what I value, and just the type of birth that I had always envisioned. The hospital staff also asked permission if one of the doctors in training could observe my birth, because he had never observed a natural and medicated birth. And I was like, oh, sure, no problem. The more the merrier. So we had a full house. We had 2 midwives. We had a doctor in training. We had myself, my husband, our doula. We also had our labor and delivery nurse, and there was one other person. So it was a very packed room. And almost everyone in the room was like completely values aligned and contributing to the overall experience and the environment that I wanted to create for my birth, except one person. We had a labor and delivery nurse who, I think the word I can only use to describe her is that she was super curmudgeon-y. She was very kind of old school, and rather than kind of empowering me to lead, she was very controlling and domineering in what she told me to do and how she told me I needed to push and breathe, and in what to expect. And to top that all off, she also was a smoker. And so she had smoker's breath. And what is really fascinating for me about her being in the room, and just about having someone like that be inside of my own energetic bubble, inside such a vulnerable state and such a deeply intimate experience, is that it didn't actually bother me that she was there. And I completely attribute that to all the work I've done over the past decade. A prior version of me would have been completely riled up or taken out, or maybe even angry and venomous about having someone in my space trying to tell me what to do, rather than helping to empower me and encouraging me to lead. And what was so fascinating for me is that she didn't get under my skin at all. And I could tell, even being completely out of it, right? Even in the midst of my contractions, I could tell that I wasn't the only one who felt that way. I could tell that she was getting under my husband's skin and that she was getting under our doula's skin. But I think something I was able to do in that moment, and something that, again, I completely attribute to all the coaching work I've done, is that I was simply able to tune out the voices that weren't aligned and that I did not trust, like hers. And I was able to tune in the voices that were supportive and empowering to me. So quite literally what this looked like is I just blocked her out energetically, and laughed at her in my head. And I tuned in the voice of my husband and my doula and our midwife, who were telling an entirely different message with an entirely different energetic vibe. And it literally made all the difference. The other important highlight from that day that I really want to share is actually a gem that I took from one of my clients turned friends. And it was the option to use nitrous oxide during my labor and delivery if I felt like I needed some support. So I have always wanted a natural, unmedicated birth. And again, like most things, I was open to the possibility of pain management or alternative options if I needed them. But having a natural, unmedicated birth is something that I've just always envisioned for myself. It's what my mom had with me. It's always been a dream. But like most things, right, when we're trying to hold our dreams, there's oftentimes barriers or moments of fear that put your dream in question. And so for me, that absolutely happened when I was delivering Micah. I think I was right between 7 and 8 centimeters dilated. And I had kind of reached this moment of hopelessness where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And I had promised myself that if I reached that point where I was considering pain alternatives, that I would ask for nitrous oxide. And this is something that, again, one of my dear clients had recommended I consider. It's not pain management per se, it's laughing gas, but it helps cloud your senses a little so that you're not as present to the pain that you're experiencing. So I asked to try nitrous oxide versus jumping first or directly to an epidural. And interestingly enough, they brought me the nitrous oxide tank and the gas mask, and I'm trying it, and it's not working. I'm literally not feeling anything. And again, having never used this before, I don't entirely know what you're supposed to feel or how it's supposed to work. The labor and delivery nurse told me how to use it. And so there I am trying to suck in air hard and then breathe through the mask. And I literally can't do either. And now again, I'm so grateful for this decade of work in learning how to find my voice as an empathpreneur, because I was able to advocate for myself in that moment and just communicate, hey, I don't think hey, the mask is not working. I don't think this is working. I was able to advocate for myself and just communicate, hey, I don't think this is working. I can't feel anything and I cannot exhale through this mask. And the labor and delivery nurse, she kind of challenged me and said, no, I think it's working. You just need to breathe harder. And again, like I was able to advocate for myself a second time and just say, no, it's not working. Can you please bring me another tank? Now, a prior version of myself would have collapsed, would have trusted that kind of inherent power dynamic that you're inside of in that very vulnerable state. They listened to me. They brought me another tank. They brought me a new mask, and it immediately started working. And it made a massive difference in the pain that I was present to during the contractions. At one point, I remember like mid-contraction, I like take the mask off my face and I'm like, this is completely different. It's working now. And I was so proud of myself, right? Like even kind of like being half out of it, I was so proud of myself for advocating for myself multiple times in that moment of pain, in that moment of vulnerability, because truly a prior version of myself never would have been able to. This is one of the reasons I think we all need to have doulas support us in our labor and delivery experiences, regardless of how much work we've done on ourselves, because it can be really hard to advocate for yourself in those moments of weakness and in those moments of just complete vulnerability and like massive unknown as a first-time mom, right? I do really attribute that nitrous oxide to making the difference between us having a natural unmedicated birth and not being able to endure that pain and needing medication. It made such a difference. It also allowed me to relax and allowed baby to naturally lower. And by 4:30 that afternoon, the baby had lowered into the birthing canal, and I was able to safely and naturally deliver Micah into the world in like 45 minutes. My husband was able to help catch the baby and pass him to me and announce the gender and cut the umbilical cord. And it's like just the most profound, life-changing experience that I've ever experienced. It was like otherworldly. And the irony is that when they passed the baby into my arms, like I was completely lucid and I was also completely grounded. I think they recorded videos of me, and I think the first things I said to my son was like, oh my goodness, hello, it's so nice to meet you. Not crying, not like overwhelmed with emotion. And then like 30 seconds after that, when I saw my husband and I saw how moved he was, like the emotional impact of what I had just done caught up with me, and we just broke down into tears, and it was just so, so beautiful. And truly, it felt like a life-changing day. I don't think I've ever been prouder of myself and of my body and what I can physically and spiritually do. And life has felt forever changed in just the most magical and beautiful way possible. Since coming home with Micah, things have gone so smoothly, more smoothly than I could have imagined. I think that I've just fallen naturally and gracefully into motherhood. And things have just made sense in a way that I've been yearning for. Where my multiple hour morning routine used to be the highlight of my day and something that I held with so much sacredness and reverence. it's now transformed into a completely different morning routine that I hold with the same amount of reverence, and it looks entirely different. And I wouldn't trade it for a minute. I now find myself laying in bed until I naturally wake up with the baby and enjoying those early morning hours with a cup of coffee in bed, having reading time with my newborn, playing, and completely allowing his own natural rhythms to guide our morning routine and the timing of things. Now, I know that not every new mama has that same luxury, and I do not take it lightly how much privilege I have in being able to have a morning routine like that, or also in knowing that I don't have to go back to an office at all, and that I can come back to business while working from home in a way that just completely works for my family. And I'm so grateful for that. Had we had our son earlier on in my career, when I was still working in an office, maternity leave and kind of the anticipation of going back to work full time would just look entirely different than it does now. But as it stands, like, I don't have any major concerns or fears about going back to work post maternity leave. I feel excited and also just present to a whole lot of possibility for how I want to reinvent things. Another thing that's really shifted inside of maternity leave is that I've massively lowered my expectations for what I commit to or what I set intentions for myself to get done in a day. It is wild how much time babies take and just how little you can actually get done in a day when you have a baby on your boob pretty much all day, which is what it feels like some days these days. So oftentimes now I find myself asking, what would a win look like today? Or what would be enough for me today? Like, essentially, what would I need to get done today that would have me feel like I got done what I needed to get done for me, rather than just it all being about baby. Now, that ability to massively lower my expectations in the way that I have is something that I can guarantee also would not have looked like this had I had a baby earlier on in my journey. The next choice that we've made about parenting is that we're keeping the baby off of social media. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I have very infrequently been on social media. I haven't posted any pictures of the baby. There's been some announcements of baby that were already scheduled with the podcast episodes and the promotional work that my podcasting team releases for me. But it has felt incredibly freeing to just keep that part of our personal life off of social media, to not need to engage with the dopamine high of and fix of social media and the likes and the comments. And man, it's just been completely liberating. Another thing that's looked really different for us postpartum is that we've been welcoming visitors into the house pretty much from the first week. We've had like a steady cadence of visitors and family visiting and even staying over. And I have loved celebrating being a mom and celebrating our son with our family and friends. It's been such a joy to not feel lonely, to be surrounded by people I love. That's been such a blessing. And then the last choice we made in parenting is one that I never thought that I would make for me. Having a baby as a 40-year-old mom, you can imagine that I've had many friends and family members have babies before me, and I've got to observe how they do it and see and take note around how I would want to do things for myself. And one of those choices that I thought that I would never make for myself was co-sleeping. I always envisioned being a mom that would have an independent sleeper early. Maybe because I respect my sleep so much, maybe because I wanted that separation. But I will say that you never know what type of baby you're going to get. You never know what independent needs your baby is going to have. And something that I have not only had to surrender to, but also completely fallen in love with is bed sharing. Our baby sleeps with us every night. And sleeping does not feel like a drag. I noticed that it's just been a natural rhythm and cadence for us to co-sleep. And it is not a choice I ever thought that I would make for myself. So there you have it. There are kind of the highlights of our birth story and our journey, some of the new choices that I've been making both in my postpartum timeframe and during maternity leave, and also as first-time parents. Two of the overall lessons that I'm really holding on to throughout this whole pregnancy and first-time mom journey is that we get to own what we want, right? Like it is on us to like own the crap out of what we really want, whether it's to have a baby, buy a house, become self-employed, fall in love, become a millionaire, travel the world, whatever it is, right? Like it is completely on both you and me to fully articulate and communicate what we want. And we actually have to do it. We have to take those courageous and brave steps to acknowledge, to express, to own what we want so that we're spiritually able to detach from how it goes. The final lesson I want to share with you all in today's episode is one that I think we continually get to learn as empathpreneurs. It's one that I'm continually learning on a deeper and deeper level. And it's the reminder that we have to allow ourselves to be celebrated. Something that happened during my labor and delivery is that we received a lot of compliments and we received a lot of praise around my pregnancy. We received a lot of compliments and we also received so much praise about how I did delivering Micah. Now, this is something that I just imagined hospital staff say to everyone. I just imagined that, you compliment the mom, you tell her how good of a job she did, and then, off you go. And something that really stuck with me is that the compliments and the praise did not stop. People were coming to our labor and delivery room and then to our room in the postpartum care unit for the whole time that we were in the hospital. Just complimenting us again, letting us know that you don't often see a natural unmedicated birth anymore, like how magical it was, how I don't occur like a first-time mom, how easy this seems to be going for us with the labor and delivery and the breastfeeding and everything else. And there was this part of me that just didn't want to receive all those compliments that didn't think that I had done anything exceptional. And I think that we often don't fully acknowledge ourselves for the exceptional things that we do all the time in life. And what I realize is that this was an exceptional birth. This was a beautiful, magical, special, natural, unmedicated birth. And I am so freaking proud of myself for it. And the message I want to leave you with on today's episode is that we consistently need to expand our capacity to receive love. And it comes in so many forms and fashions, right? Like allowing ourselves to feel people's acknowledgement and praise of us is one version of it. Allowing ourselves to receive gifts with appreciation and excitement is another version of it. Allowing ourselves to feel people's excitement for us, right? Like these are all versions of how we can allow ourselves to be celebrated. And as we do, as we expand our capacity to receive and feel love and celebration, we expand our own capacity to celebrate and to be content and to be present. And I have been so freaking present and happy and content during my own maternity leave. And I think it's because of this. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I shared a little bit more than I was intending to today, but if you took anything with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Come on over to our private community. It's really the only place I'm hanging out online these days, and share with me what your one takeaway was. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.